Welcome, everybody, into this edition of ESPN FC Live on the ESPN FC YouTube channel, alongside my good friend and colleague, Shaka Hislop. I'm Sebastian Salazar. Great to have you with us. Shaka, how you doing on this Friday, November 15th?
As good as every Friday. Fridays are great, aren't they?
They are great. They are great. Even in an international break, though I know you're a big international football guy, so you're never one to miss club football all that bad, right?
I do miss it. I love internationals, but I do miss club football when we don't have it.
All right, we will be talking about some international games coming up a little bit later in the show. Going to talk about USA Jamaica, big game in the CONCACAF Nations League last night. The U.S. getting a win away in Kingston. We'll discuss that. We'll also discuss England, who, of course, put up a great showing against Greece. Got a game coming up Sunday against Ireland, the final match before Thomas Tuchel takes over. Shaka, so we'll talk about maybe who in that England camp has better positioned themselves for a spot on the 2026 World Cup team. But let's start with the club game and something from the website, ESPN.com, where our colleague Sam Tighe has ranked the top 15 most important players, Shaka, for each of the big six. And if there's anybody at this company that knows anything about rankings, it is indeed Shaka Hislop. So we're going to have you double check, we'll put it that way, double check, cross-reference Sam's work. Let's start with Arsenal. And we're not going to do everybody's top 15, okay? We're just going to do the top five here. Arsenal, of course, fourth right now, 9 points back of Liverpool, your league leaders. At 5, we got Declan Rice. 4, Gabriel Magalhaes. 3, William Saliba. 2, Bukayo Saka. And then 1, this is interesting because he has been hurt, Martin Odegaard. Shaka, did Sam get this right as far as Arsenal's top 5 is concerned?
Yeah, I think so. And to your point about Martin Odegaard, I'm not sure if Sam had done this list a month, 2 months ago, Martin Odegaard would have been top. But all of a sudden, because of that injury that you referenced, Seb, and Arsenal struggles as a result, you realize how important Martin Odegaard has been to Arsenal. With the others, and again, we probably would have said something totally different a month or two ago. If Bukayo Saka is out of the team, maybe they don't struggle as much as they have been over the last few weeks. Similarly with Saliba and Gabriel, if both are out, Arsenal have a problem. But if one is, you just feel that the other can make up for any slack, or Arsenal can certainly cope. And Arsenal have had to cope without Declan Rice, because of suspension earlier this season. And again, you feel that it won't have as big an impact as we've seen over the last few weeks with Martin Odegaard after picking up his injury playing for Norway in the October transfer window. So no, I have no problem with Sam's list for Arsenal.
Shaka, it's not just about who's kind of in the list, it's who's not in the list. You look at that top 5, Kai Havertz not in that list. What does that say about the season he's having?
Up and down, which we've discussed. And in fairness to Kai Havertz, I don't think he's a number 9, a natural number 9. He can play there. He can play any number of positions, to be fair to him. At one point, he was used at left back for Germany. So, I don't mean this entirely as a swipe at Kai Havertz, but he's just not the number 9. I think you need to propel you past Manchester City, even with their struggles this season, or as we've seen so far this season, Liverpool, who have been surprisingly good under Arne Slot. Again, I think Kai Havertz not being on the list is no real surprise, though even without him, the likes of Gabriel Jesus, who has not been pulling up trees himself for quite some time, I might add, I'm not sure that how well Arsenal cope without Kai Havertz either. But in terms of just return, I'm not sure I'd have him on the list either.
All right, Shaka, that's Arsenal. Again, these are Sam Tighe's rankings of the top 15 most important players at the big 6 clubs in the Premier League. So if you got any issue with it, it's not Shaka you're taking issue with. It's Sam. Remember that. Yeah. Remember that. As you get active there, you keyboard warriors on social media, or I know here in the comments, Shaka, they always come for you in the comments. You got to be careful. All right, so let's go from Arsenal to Chelsea. They're actually even on points. Chelsea right now, third in the Premier League. Let's see who Sam has in his top 5 most important players right now for Chelsea. Noni Madueke coming in there at 5th. Levi Colwill 4. Nicholas Jackson 3. Moises Caicedo 2. And Cole Palmer. I don't think much of a surprise there at number 1. Shaka, what do you think of this list?
I have absolutely no issue with this list. Absolutely.
Wow, look at that. Sam getting straight A's for his work.
Absolutely. And I think what you've seen, and in particular, I'm looking at number 2 and number 3 there, Caicedo and Jackson, and how good both of them have been this season. How good both of them have been in comparison to what we saw last season. Probably if we did a most improved list, Premier League list, Nicholas Jackson would probably be top of it. Given I thought his struggles last season, I wondered if he'd be able to make the grade at a league like this. And then all of a sudden, what we've been seeing from Nicholas Jackson under Maresca for Chelsea has been absolutely revealing. He really has everything about Nicholas Jackson's game. I think has improved. His hold-up play, even his finishing, I think has been so good this season. And now while Caicedo struggled last season for Chelsea, we knew how good Caicedo was, given his performances for Brighton, which prompted Chelsea to pay the money that they did. And all of a sudden, that looked like a lot of money going to waste for most, if not all of last season. But this season, Moses Caicedo has certainly turned that around and is again proving himself to be one of the best defensive midfielders in the league.
You mentioned the money, Shaka, right? I feel like when we talk about Chelsea, you kind of have to talk about the money. And for all the money that they've spent, I feel like Cole Palmer, what was it, 40, 50 million? Like that's relatively not that much in today's market. What a bargain that seems like. The other side of that, though, is a guy like Enzo Fernandez, who's nowhere near this top 5, and they spent over 100 million on that. Imagine spending $100 million on a player, and he's not even in, forget the league's top 5 most important players, not even your club's top 5 most important players. That's going to hurt you long term.
Of course it is. And we're talking about a World Cup winner as well, and Enzo Fernandez. Listen, again, maybe he struggled kind of given Chelsea's incompetence, let's call it that, last season, and that's not a swipe solely at the team, though of course the product on the pitch is everything to judge by. But Chelsea had so many issues even higher up for all of last season. There seemed to be a reshuffling, which I'll speak for myself, I questioned during the course of this summer. But certainly results have turned around, and at least we're not talking about ownership and ownership spats and who's to blame and whose money's being spent and everything else. But Enzo Fernandez probably has been the one whose stock has been hurt most by kind of Chelsea's boardroom chaos, and let's just leave it at that. To your point about Cole Palmer, and again, this kind of spoke to some of the chaos of Chelsea and their transfer policy. Cole Palmer was on the verge of joining West Ham, and then all of a sudden Chelsea come in at the 11th hour. I think I'm right in saying day before the end of the transfer deadline, to swoop away Cole Palmer, who has just proven to be not only Chelsea's best player, but arguably one of the best players in the league. I know he hasn't had a good couple of weeks in a Chelsea shirt, but all in all, since his arrival at Stamford Bridge, I don't think you can question Cole Palmer's performance or his value to the team. So despite the chaos, at least Chelsea were able to get that one right, and thankfully so.
All right, so Cole Palmer having a great season for Chelsea right now, who are 3rd in the table. Everybody chasing Liverpool. So let's go to Liverpool next. Again, this is Sam Tide's ranking of the top 15 most important players at each of the big 6. We're only going over the top 5 for each team. Here's Liverpool's top 5 according to Sam. Konate at 5, Ryan Gravenberg there at number 4, Trent Alexander-Arnold 3, Mo Salah 2, and Virgil van Dijk 1. Did he get that 1-2 right, Shaka?
That's. I've got 2 questions about this list. Like, listen, 3, 4, and 5 we can argue about, and we can maybe chop and change. I would have Mo Salah ahead of Virgil van Dijk in that list. I just feel Liverpool are not Liverpool without Salah's goals. So for me, that is a bigger piece. And I know there's a broader conversation to be had about Liverpool and players going out of contract, but that's for another day. Right now, we're talking about who are Liverpool's most important players. I would have Mo Salah one. The other question I would have is, and while I say I have we can discuss 3, 4, and 5 and the order of it. Where's Luis Diaz for me? I think he needs to be in that list. And exactly where and ahead of who? I probably would have Luis Diaz ahead of Gravenberch, and as a result, Konate drops out. But Gravenberch, again, has been good, has been that defensive midfielder that Liverpool have needed. But let me put it this way. If I were picking a team tomorrow and I had to pick one of Luis Diaz or Ryan Gravenberch, I'd pick Luis Diaz.
Okay. What about a guy like Darwin Núñez? I feel like when we say most important, we think of performance. But if Darwin Núñez started scoring goals, how important would this be for a Liverpool team that already is 5 points clear of second place City?
The big issue there is if Darwin Núñez starts scoring goals. If you were 6'6", Sebastian could handle a basketball, you'd be very important to LA itself. But nobody's having that discussion. We'll have that discussion about Darwin Núñez's importance to Liverpool when he starts scoring goals. How about we settle on that, Mr. Basketball, you 6'6", Sebby?
That's right. I was fantasizing about that, just seeing myself soaring through the air for dunk, Shaka. You don't know about my hoops game back in the day.
Somebody saw you soaring through the air.
Yeah. Somebody threw me through the air if I was soaring through the air. That's the only way that happened. All right, so then let's move from Liverpool to Manchester United. Obviously, a total other side of the spectrum here, right? 13th in the table, having a terrible season, 4 wins from just 11 games played so far. 5, Lisandro Martinez. 4, Diogo Dalot. 3, Kobe Mino. 2, Andre Onana. And 1, Bruno Fernandes. Your thoughts, Shaka?
Diogo Dalot in that list? I don't fully appreciate. I've got no problem with 1, 2, or even 3. Kobe Mino in number 3. Diogo Dalot in on that list. I'm not sure I'd have him in that high. I'm not sure I'd have him in, and I'll be honest. Lisandro Martinez. I think when fit, he is one of Manchester United's more important players. So I have no issue with that. The trouble is, listen, it's part of the game, and shouldn't hold the player to fault for this. But Lisandro Martinez has just had to miss too many games for Manchester United. They've had to do without him, and maybe that kind of signals how important he is to the team. But again, given the fact that they've had to cope without him, I'm not sure I'd have him in my list. Now, again, kind of given Manchester United's own struggles, I'm not sure who would have in, because I think everybody else has been that inconsistent for Manchester United that whatever name he threw up will be highly contentious, will be debatable.
Yeah, I think if you think of the great Manchester United teams the past, and you would have thought of their top 5s, one thing that would have been very different than this top 5 is that you would have had a lot more players that were further up the field. Yeah. You would have had a lot more attacking players, strikers. Bruno Fernandes here is the most attacking player. Everybody else, it probably does more defending than they do attacking. And that tells you a lot about what Manchester United's season has been like so far, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Nobody needs reminding that Manchester United have struggled by their own expectation. And for much of this season, by their own measure, even for last season, a team that finished in their lowest ever Premier League finish last season at 8th, somehow are managing to surpass that quite handsomely during the course of this season. Ruben Amorim has a big job on his hands. This list speaks to that job. And again, the kind of lack of attacking players. We could debate whether Rashford and certainly what we saw of Rashford in 2023, the second half of the 22-23 season post-World Cup, kind of signals how important he is to Manchester United. So if you're saying that when Rashford is good, Manchester United are a whole lot better, a better version of themselves, maybe he deserves to be in that list. But then his inconsistencies and his struggles, does he really deserve to be in that list? Rasmus Højlund, similarly, and that's a young player I like a lot, but a big ask in a position that, when we're talking about the great Manchester United teams, you get a lot more from. So again, that's not his fault. He's been asked to do a job in a team that are shadow them for themselves. And while he's giving as good as he possibly can, it's nowhere near what you would think of Manchester United, 10, 15 years ago, probably. But in terms of this team, probably deserves to be on that list.
Again, we're going over Sam Tighe's rankings of the most important players at each of the Premier League Big Six with the power rankings expert himself, Shaka Hislop. Let's move from Manchester United to Manchester City, who right now are in second place, 5 points back of your league leaders, Liverpool. And number 5, Sam's got Ruben Diaz. 4, Mateo Kovacic. 3, Josko Gvardiol. 2, Phil Foden. And number 1, Erling Haaland. Of course, no Rodri on this list. He was taken off of Sam's choices because of the injury. So, sans Rodri, Shaka, do you think this list looks just about right?
I'm not sure I'd have Gvardiol that high, if in the list at all. Certainly, just in terms of this 5, I would probably have him in at number 5, and then we could debate about Kovacic and Diaz and their order. I've got no problem with 1 and 2, even though by their own standards, you expect more of. And this is always the difficulty in discussing Erling Haaland. Say we expect more of Erling Haaland, but he just keeps breaking goal scoring records left, right, and centre. But given his first season and where he set his own bar, you just wonder if there's yet more to come from Erling Haaland. And again, that's an unfair comparison to almost everybody else who's played in the Premier League. But in terms of comparing it to Erling Haaland of 2 seasons ago, probably on the money. And then similarly for Phil Foden, who probably hasn't featured enough this season, kind of given his return last season in particular. So I have no problem with 1 and 2, even though, again, by their own standards, by what we've come to expect of them over recent seasons, they aren't hitting the heights that we know they can. And then the others, again, there's certainly room for debate, particularly in terms of Gvardiol.
Shaka, if Rodri's healthy, is he number 1 on that list for you? Is he ahead of Erling Haaland?
Yeah.
Wow, you said that fast.
Yeah. Listen, no question. And while to my previous point, I'm not sure how you replicate the goals of Erling Haaland if he's not in the team. It's not a conversation, and especially how do you replicate those goals post Julian Alvarez, who I thought so highly of, and I sympathise with him, his wanting to move for more regular football. But how do you replicate? While we could discuss how we replicate those goals, the one thing we know is without Rodri, City are, and as we've seen, a shadow of their former selves. We saw that during the course of the last 2 seasons. Whenever he's out, and you make those comparisons to City without Rodri and with, that spoke volumes. And then now you're seeing City having to do without Rodri on a longer term basis. And yeah, you see the impact it's having.
All right, so that's City. They're second. Last on our list here, Spurs, who right now sit 10th in the Premier League table. Here's a look at the top 5 most important players for Ange Postecoglou through the first 11 games of the Premier League season. According to Sam Tighe, you can read his article over at ESPN.com. Mickey van de Ven, number 1, Kulusevski 2, Christian Romero 3, Dominic Solanke 4, and Heung-min Son in at number 5. Shaka, what do you think of this list? Makes sense to you?
I'd probably have Solanke a whole lot higher. I think Spurs need that out-and-out striker. They've missed that, and you saw that in first 2 or 3 games when Solanke was still trying to settle in. I thought Spurs maybe didn't hit the heights that you would come to expect. So I'd probably have him above even Kulusevski. You can't have him above Van de Ven. I think just kind of given the way that Postecoglou wants Spurs to defend that very high line, Van de Ven is absolutely crucial to it. Again, a player, and this is something you and I would never have to worry about when you're that quick. You keep pulling hamstrings. You and I don't have that issue at all. We can't. But that's an issue that has proven to be an issue for Spurs. Van de Ven makes any mistake with that high line just seem kind of irrelevant because of how quickly he eats up the ground. So number one, no question whatsoever. But I would have Solanke a whole lot higher. And again, I'll say that is not taking anything away from Kulusevski and the role that he plays in this team, because he is, if he's third behind Solanke, it's a very, very close third.
Yeah, I remember the conversations that we were having in the summer about Spurs early in the season before Solanke settled in. I think maybe there was like a Newcastle game where they just had a million chances and had nobody in the box to put it home. And you knew that, if Solanke could make that fit, he would definitely be, a very important part to this team. It is weird to see a list of Spurs' most important players and see Heung-min Son as low as 5. I know that's a reflection of the current reality, but my goodness, you think of all that he's been for that club, and to see him, see 4 names ahead of him is just still a bit jarring.
It really is. It really is. But to point 7, you're absolutely right. This season, I think that's who Heung-min Son has been for Spurs. He has been at that number five position. Now, if we want to talk about over the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons, if you want to go a whole lot further, Heung-min Son is right up there with the very best, the most important Spurs players for quite some time. In all honesty, he really is. But just this season, and it comes to every single football player. This season, he's nowhere near as important to Spurs and the way they play as he has been previously. But again, don't let this list take away from how good a player he has been, how important a player he has been for Spurs over the years.
Okay, so there it is, our review of Sam Tighe's list of the most important players for each of the Premier League's Big 6. You can read the entire list over at the website, ESPN.com. Make sure to check that out. Shaka, let's talk some international football. Let's start in our neck of the woods, CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinals going on right now. For those that don't know, it's 2 legs. So the U.S. and Jamaica playing the first leg last night in Kingston, and the United States, Shaka, getting a 1-0 win in Mauricio Pochettino's first competitive game in charge of the national team. What'd you make of the performance and the result? Because we know winning away in CONCACAF is generally not easy, and has definitely not been easy for this U.S. team.
Yeah, winning away at the office in Kingston is never easy at the best of times. So for Pochettino to get a win, I thought that was huge for him and needed. For him to get the win in the manner that they did, even more so. I thought the US were very good against Jamaica. A very good Jamaica team, by the way. Steve McLaren is getting this team trending in the right direction. They still have a number of players that they hope to introduce over the coming months in preparation for their own World Cup qualifying push. And I've spoken about Jamaica and my partiality to them. As I keep saying, Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, it's a little bit of a sibling rivalry between us. When we aren't involved, we are fully supporting the others. So I watched this game with an eye firmly on Jamaica, and I'll be honest, backing Jamaica. But I thought the US equipped themselves wonderfully well. How I guess your term is vertical they were. How willing they were to run at Jamaica defensively, create chances. But for better finishing, The US could have won this maybe 2 or 3, but then you could probably say the same about Jamaica. Missed penalty, of course, couple other chances that maybe had they done better with, we'd be having a very different discussion than we are right now. But credit to Matt Turner, who's come under some criticism of late for both club and country. That was a big save from Demarai Gray. And I thought the US as a team responded to that, kind of grew in the game. And I give the team, I give Pochettino a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this Jamaica team on paper, of course, no Mikel Antonio in this one, but Shamar Nicholson up top is just he's a handful. He's a problem. He scores goals against good teams in CONCACAF. Like he's given Mexico problems before. Leon Bailey, Demarai Gray. These are guys who at CONCACAF level can be very dangerous. Steve McLaren now in charge. You could see this Jamaica team causing some problems. It is a good result, Shaka, and just from a U.S. perspective, it's something they weren't really capable of doing under Greg Berhalter. Like they could not win away. Their last 15 games away before last night, they had 2 wins away from the United States. One was against Bermuda, so you take that with a pretty big grain of salt. And the other wasn't a true away win. It's against Iran in the World Cup, so a neutral site win. Yeah. At best. So the U.S. away from the United States really has a poor record for Mauricio Pochettino in his first competitive game to go away to, as what you're saying is a very competitive Jamaica in their home stadium and get a result is very, very good. I do want to ask you about one play that was quite controversial there. You mentioned a missed penalty for Jamaica. Demarai Gray took it. Matt Turner saved it. There was another penalty shot in the second half for Jamaica. Matt Turner made a save on what could have been an Olympico off a corner kick. It bounces out, and the shot's headed towards goal. Tim Ream kind of chicken wings it, gets a left arm up. What did you think? Penalty or no?
I didn't think it was a penalty. And while, yes, he does kind of throw his left arm out, I thought the ball caught him at the top of that left shoulder. So unless there's a replay out there that says differently, first look for me, no penalty. I again, kind of, given what I've seen, no question to it. It wasn't a penalty. You can do whatever you want with your arm, as long as the ball doesn't hit it. And I don't think the ball was anywhere near. And we've had this ridiculous debate about the shoulder and the badge and all that. No, I don't think that comes into it. Again, from what I've seen, the ball hit him flush top of the shoulder. So as a result, throwing the shoulder out doesn't matter in the slightest.
All right, so the U.S. 1-0 winners in Kingston. The second leg will be Monday in St. Louis. That for a spot in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals. Football Americas, by the way, will be live on ESPN Plus right after that second leg between the United States and Jamaica. Shaka, before we get out of here, let's talk some England. All right, a very impressive 3-0 win against Greece. On Sunday, they'll face off against Ireland. Promotion at stake in that one, so it should be a fairly competitive match, as it always is between those two teams. But it will also be the final match before Thomas Tuchel takes over. And so before we get into kind of the individuals who might have improved their stock in the eyes of Thomas Tuchel as he's looking at this, I want to ask you big picture. How important is what's happened before Thomas Tuchel takes over to what Thomas Tuchel is going to do once he takes over? Because we know he doesn't have a real long runway, right? The World Cup is coming up. He's got maybe 8 windows before he's got to have this team ready for the major international competition.
I'll be honest, and this probably leans into the discussion that we're about to have with players who've kind of maybe whose stock has risen or not, as you put it, Sebi. Nothing. I don't think anything that England has done under Lee Carsley impacts what Thomas Tuchel does. He's going to come in with his own ideas in terms of playing style. Thomas Tuchel, I'm sure, knows English football well enough, and the players pool that's available to him, not just the immediate 23 or 26, but the wider players pool, and will make his own assessments and his own selections from that. If you were a young player who's given an opportunity under Carsley, as we've seen during the course of this window, and we'll see what happens against Ireland, yes, that's welcomed. But if you're a seasoned, experienced pro who's got a number of caps already under his belt, whether you were in the squad or not, and again, this leads into the conversation we're about to have, I'm not sure it factors any in Tuchel's ultimate decision.
Okay, so let's think about it this way then. We know Tuchel's at least going to watch these games. If he hasn't watched them already, he'll watch the film at some point. So as he's watching this film, who are the players that you think over the last couple games have stood out to him, who he might be saying, okay, this guy is going to fit into what I want to do? I would throw a name out like Curtis Jones, right? And maybe that's not just based on what he's done with England, also what he's done with Liverpool this season. But that's a player who I think in the last few months, and especially now with the naming of Tuchel as the manager, you say, okay, I see these two pieces working well together.
Look, Curtis Jones has been outstanding for Liverpool, which kind of, again, maybe brings us back to a conversation we were having earlier. But Curtis Jones has been one of the big surprises of a Liverpool season so far. And no question, I think he figures and features for England as we go forward. But given his performances for Liverpool, that shouldn't come as a surprise. And maybe if his performances under Carsley were that poor, you would say, well, he fits at Liverpool, but not for England. But they haven't. So to that point, I take what you're saying about Curtis Jones to that point. But again, for me, we always talk about when a new manager comes in, everybody starts with a clean slate. Every single manager says it when first time they walk through the door. Everybody starts with a clean slate, and which for me kind of made the decision for Tuchel not starting till January 1st all the more bemusing, because you have these couple of transfer windows. One transfer window in November. Tuchel was named a few weeks ago. And you're not quite sure what it meant. Now, the October window, where Carsley's kind of, even though I didn't think so, but Carsley's kind of thinking, listen, if I get this right, I might be in the reckoning. Then all of a sudden, if Carsley gets a job, we're having a different discussion about players' long-term futures, shall we call it, with England. But Carsley doesn't get it. Tuchel does, and he's not going to be doing anything until January. I just find that kind of odd.
Not doing anything till January? That sounds kind of nice to me. I could get onto that work schedule. I don't know if anybody here at ESPN is listening. All right, that'll do it for us. He's Shaka Hislop. I'm Sebastian Salazar. Thanks so much for checking us out, and make sure to subscribe here on the ESPN FC YouTube channel.